they started telling me how much God loved me, right? And it blew my mind because I had just said, God, if you're real, right? And the pastor's prayer. So now that reality is right there. And then I'm looking at them, and then I they fade away. Like humans start to fade away at that moment. Um the people, the pastor, like I heard the voices of them praying, but their faces I no longer saw. And what I saw with my eyes was this bright light, brighter than this light right here. You know how bright this light is? Like, yo, what's going on, everybody? So today's video is gonna be a little bit different. I thought that I should, speak about my testimony. And some of you have been asking for a video like this, and maybe if this is your first time across this channel and you're just looking for a Christian perspective or somebody who believes in Jesus and want to hear stories, well, I pray that this story encounters you and blesses you and gives you some type of hope and leads you to the heart of God. I guess this story starts way back in the beginning. Well, first, before I even go to all of that, make sure you guys do your boy a favor and like the video, comment on the video, share the video, and hit that subscription bell icon, whatever it is, so that way we can help this channel grow. And yeah, let's get right into it. So the story of my life starts off when I was around 4 years old. My father, um, my father was well, he used to do heroin. So you see, this part of my story is kind of like this, is so you can understand me. Certain parts of my story are still unclear because my family has different answers and different things that they say. So one family member says, well, my father did heroin and he shared a needle. On other family members say, he slept around and he contracted the HIV virus. And you got to remember, this is in the early 70s, early 80s, when there was no treatment for this virus, and this virus was super deadly. So this is where I come into the story. Basically, my father had contracted the virus and obviously had given it to my mother without him knowing that he actually had the virus. He actually gave it to my mother, and my mother was pregnant with me in her body, right? So my mother was pregnant, and doctors thought that their baby, which was me, the youngest of all my siblings. Let me just say that I got two sisters, Frances and Ada, and I have an older brother named Joel. I call him Woody. And these are my siblings. My brother Joel, he's a half brother because he's from a different father. But Frances and Ada, we have the same mother and father. So just so you guys can understand like who I am, and these tattoos that I have actually on my wrist, if you can see, that's actually Francis's name. Oops, sorry, Francis. And then I got Ada right here. Like certain things on my body. So yeah. So I'm the youngest of all my siblings, and when my mother, had me, she did have the virus in her bloodstream, and by the grace of God, now I know hindsight is 2020, right? Like, by the grace of God, I didn't contract the virus, and I had clean blood. I didn't have HIV in my body. So basically, both my parents passed away when I was around 4 and 5 years old. They both passed away, and I was moved around until I went to Dallas, and I was raised with an aunt. Now, mind you, like me and my aunt, before I say everything that I'm about to say, I have forgiven my aunt for the things that she did, and I have asked her for forgiveness for the things that I did in my pain. So this isn't a video to bash anybody by any means. This is just my story, and this is what this is what made me the man that I am today. I was raised in a place with an aunt, of course. She had siblings of her own, 8 children in total. And so it's just, well, it was 8 of us in total with all of us in there. She had, you know, 3 sons and $2, and then she got me and my 2 sisters, so that's 8 people total. So I at this time, I understand like there was a lot also on her plate. But I was raised in a place where I was physically and mentally abused. I was told certain things about myself that made me feel less value. I would get treated differently. I could not get a haircut. In high school, I couldn't get a fade. You know, um, like while her kids could get a haircut and get a fade and do the things that normal people could do, with me it was always a problem. I had to be outside, I had to be working, I'd had to be cleaning under the house, picking up the dog poop, crushing cans, you just so much like things that kind of started to make me question why I was even here on this world, in this earth. I remember, we were raised Catholic, so we would go to church, on the Easters and the Ash Wednesdays, and just those times. And I just would remember, like, I did a catechism class. I went through the whole class and we read about God, and I passed it. I actually even was an altar boy at one point, but even with all that in my heart, I couldn't really believe that Jesus was this good God when all I saw was him dead on that cross. And I was questioning, like, if God is so good, then why is my life the way it is? Um, there's some things that I went through as a young adult where my identity was attacked, as far as, like, I was insecure about myself. I felt very ugly. I felt, I used to get made fun of in school because my eyebrows connected. Anthony Davis. Like, I commend him, and like he didn't let that bother him, but it bothered me. Because people would mock me and say things like McDonald's to me, and I would try to tell my aunt, and she would get mad at me and make me have it. And I remember one day I shaved it, and she got so angry at me, and I got beat for that. Certain things like that. So it was just a constant battle of trying to fit in and trying to find myself in the midst of my brokenness. There'd be times where I'd be put to bed early, and I would hear, the other siblings over there eating pizza and laughing, and it'd be super early, and I'd be laying down in the bed, not even sleepy, but just forced to be in the room. And I would look up at the ceiling, and I would see a Bible, and I remember there was a Bible in the room, and I would try to open it, and I would open it to Genesis 1, and in the beginning God, and I could never get past that because it was just like I felt like, if God was so real, and if God is who he is, and why did God allow me to be born into this type of situation? A lot of confusion, like, where's my mother, where's my father, why am I in this house, why do I feel less loved, why do I feel like I can't be who I want to be, I can dress the way I want to dress, stuff like that. And that really spiraled me to the moment where, at the age of 17, you know I had a cousin. Shout out Frankie. He was a cousin from my. I'm sorry. He is a cousin from my uncle's side of the family, right? So my aunt, she's the blood sister of my mother, and she married this man. Rest in peace, Tio Perico. Jose is his name as well. But he was an amazing man. As with, like, he was so amazing to me. Like, I can't even go. He actually put work ethic in me. If I could say something about him, he made me the man that I am as well, with the work ethic, with hard working, and knowing how to just create things and be a creator, and never be lazy, and take initiative. And he really did instill these things in me also with my music. So shout out, rest in peace to my deal. But his nephew, Frankie, he actually spoke to me one day. I was in high school, and I had just gotten well, I got in trouble because I had got a fade, and I tried to get a fade for the first time, and my aunt, she shaved me bald. And I'm in high school, and what a dramatic change from one day with a lot of hair to the next day bald. It was like, people would ask me, yo, what's going on? Like, why you're bald? And I, make up stories. But I remember Frankie, he said, bro, my mother, loves you. And she would, if you want to leave that place, bro, like, you got a home in me. Like, I'm here for you. And God used Frankie at that time of my life to actually set me on course to this testimony that I was going to come into, right? So Frankie, allowed me to go into his home, and his mother loved me. And I remember Frankie took me to get my first haircut. And yeah, see, this is a part of my testimony. For some of y'all, maybe this is like, this is not really too much, for some of you, like, you're like, well, why was it a big deal for a haircut, and all these things, like, because internally, my identity wasn't, I felt like I was unworthy, and I remember Frankie took me to my first real haircut, and got my eyebrows waxed, and I remember looking in the mirror after it, and I just remember crying because I couldn't recognize, the dude that I was looking at. And so that kind of set me on the course of, rebellion. I started rebelling. I remember, at one point I left Frankie's house, and it was a bad decision. I should have stood at his house, but I wanted to, venture off, and get distracted by girls, and things as a teenager does. And at that place, I moved to a place called Webb Chapel over there in Dallas. And I was living in Webb Chapel, and I had my own apartment. And I was working at Jack in the Box, and man, I was like doing heroin, I was doing crack, I was stealing, I was with the wrong people, I was going from girl to girl, fighting, just all of these things just to get away from who I was inside. I was lost, I was broken, and there was a lot of things wrong with me. But of course, I kept a good mask on. You ever put a mask on, like, oh, you good, but you ain't really good. Like, you going through something, but I masked my pain well. I masked my pain well, and I did that with drugs, and women, and all the crazy nonsense that I was doing. So essentially, I was just dying slowly. um but God has a way to, to do things in your life to get your attention. And I had a friend that allowed another friend to stay in my home, and he was caught with a few pounds of heroin on him. So because they went to the apartment that he was living in, which was under my name, I had a 24-hour notice to leave the apartment, and of course, me at that time, I'm 18 years old now. Like, that's the only place I have. I was like, nah, I'm not leaving nowhere. I paid my rent, like, he's not on the lease. And long story short, the security, of the apartment complex, they, bolt up the my apartment with everything in it. And my reckless self, we kicked the door down. I went into my apartment that night trying to be sneaky, like, I'm gonna sleep here. I don't got nowhere to sleep at the end of the day. Like, I'm gonna kick this door in. At that time, I was on survival mode. And I remember I was like a party again. I had a lot of people in that house with me. And I remember we're just all smoking, and some were doing cocaine, and others were, doing heroin, and we're just all in there. And just the door gets kicked in out of nowhere, and it's Dallas SWAT team. We get a whole SWAT team, and they take us to the ground. I see my friend next to me. Like, when they take him down, he hits his jaw, and it makes that type of noise, and he starts bleeding. And I'm less like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking they're gonna find the drugs, they're gonna find, like, it's over. It's over at that moment. It was like a movie. Um but man, we had some people in there who thought fast and flushed all the drugs that we had down the toilet. And I don't even know who that was who did it, but I'm so grateful that they did. Because I just ended up, they took me to the county jail for maybe a good week, maybe just a week, and that was a horrible week for me. Just being in there, having to fold laundry and get on that bus, and sleeping on a bunk bed, like, just it was just a miserable place. Waking up early, just, you felt alone, you felt lost. I felt that way. And I had a guy in there. He was at those days. This is a Dallas gang. They're called Dongo Blast, and he actually took up for me. And he said, I got you, man. You don't got to worry about none of these dudes in here. Like, I guess he knew I was young, I was a kid, and I thank God for that man that was there as well. Like, nothing happened to me. But once I got out of prison, once I got out of jail, I really was like in a bad place. And I tried to do good. I started working for this lawyer, very well known lawyer. His name is Domingo Garcia. And Domingo, if one day you see this, this is me. I know you. Hopefully, you remember me, but you were used by God to put me into purpose. Because I worked at his law offices, and I'm very good at typing. I'm that's one thing that I am, and I was a data entry for his law firm, and he allowed me the chance to work there. And I was at my end, and I remember I reached out to him. It was like in the middle of the night. I called him, and he actually answered his phone, and he told me to meet him at the office. Meet him at his office at night. And I didn't have a way, but he said, make a way to meet me here, and I'll help you. I remember getting to multiple buses and then walking to his office on the very top floor of Zane Street, I believe it was. I forget the name, but this is in Dallas. And I'm trying to give you guys everything. I want y'all to know me and know who I am, and the person that I become, and how all of this happened. Like, you know, I remember going to this office with him, and in his office, and he's just asking me questions like, "What do you want to do with your life?" And he's typing on his computer, and I'm telling him, like, I don't know. I'm just like, I have no family here. I have an older brother in Chicago, but I have no way to get to him. And so this is what he did. He said, "This is what I'm gonna do." He asked me, "You ever think about the army?" I'm like, "The army? Nah, bro. I ain't gonna do the army." You feel me? Little did I know that that was going to be where I was going to be going. But he said, "Here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to buy you a ticket, a one-way ticket to Chicago." And he took out from his wallet, he took out $500 cash that he had, and he gave me it in 20s. It was a lot at that time. I'm not 18 years old, 19 years old almost, and just to get handed $500 from a random like or like he was the boss. It really did something. He says, "Go and make something of yourself. Go and make something of your life. Get out. Just get out of here. Go with your brother." And that's what I did. I flew to Chicago, and I remember that flight. I remember looking out the window of that flight and just thinking, like, yo, man, like, I'm going to Chicago now. And I stood with my brother for a few months, and me and my brother will bump heads. I love him so much, but we'll bump heads. And one day he's like, "Yo, you just joined the army," and we kind of did it like, "I bet you won't join the army." And long story short, I did. Before I joined the military, I was working at this cheese factory. I was making good money every week. I was making a good amount of money, and but I didn't realize that everything had a purpose. I made it to I joined the military, and I was sent out to basic training very fast. Everything went fast, and I remember I passed boot camp and I passed my job training, and now I'm 19 years old, fresh, and I was stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii. I was stationed in Hawaii, y'all. And you know what's up. Like, I'm a young man, I'm single, I feel good, but I'm still broken. I have all this crazy lifestyle that I've been living in. I'm up, I'm wild, I'm perverse, I'm filled with sin. You feel me? Filled with all of that. And I'm in the army, and to make a long story kind of short, I remember I had a friend. He was actually gay. His name is Luis Javier. Luis, if you hear this, man, thank you. God used him to evangelize to me and tell me, "Hey, you should come to the church, come to the church, come to the church." And while he's doing that to me, like while he's trying to get me to church, I've met my wife, who is my wife. She's my girlfriend at the time. Her name was Corey. That's where my sweetheart comes in, my Corey Ann. You know, she was born and raised in Hawaii, and she had her own things in her past. And one thing about her, I reached out to her and I went into MySpace, man, and I'm like, "Yo, let me get them numbers, man. Like, here's my number. I don't beat around the bush." That's what I told her. I wrote her that, and the way she tells you the story, it's hilarious. But I know she wanted to write me. You feel me? She wanted to write me, but nah. I thank God that finally I got her number. She reached out to me, and the first thing I did was argue with her. And my prideful self. And so from that point on, she would ignore me. My wife would ignore me. So every day I would send her a message, and I was in a relationship already, and it's bad, but I was in the flesh, man. I had a own girlfriend, and stuff like that. But I was so interested in Corey, And finally she gave me the time of day. And that's how she's in this picture, because we get married after knowing each other for 3 months, 3 months of dating. So January 15th, we meet face to face, we make it official. April, we get married of the same year. So we get married on April 17th, and that's the death date anniversary of my mother. And I had no clue. I remember calling my sisters, telling them I'm about to get married, and they're like, "This is the day mommy passed away." And it was a whole lot of emotions on our marriage day. Like, it felt like we had a literal encounter that day, and I believe it was the Holy Spirit, but we didn't know. Like, it was like my wife was hugging me, but we felt this presence. We both did, and we were crying together. On the day that we got married. Um, so this is very relevant because we were married already, and my brother Lewis kept telling me to come to church, but I wasn't saved yet. I was still exploring, trying to search, but not really. And finally, I said yes to him, and so we go to the church, and you know, um, I'm smoking my cigarettes at that time, bro, and I remember smoking a cigarette outside the church. And I was always used to like the Catholic Church, and I remember like going into the church, and us Christians, we be praising. At that time I didn't know what that looked like. I thought people were crazy. I legit said to myself, these people are crazy, bro. Every one of these people in here, like, what are they doing? What's going on in here? I had never experienced something like that, right? But I remember I went to the back of the church. I went kind of hidden, and there was a lot of people in there. I say 100, but there was a good amount of people in the place that I wasn't. See, right now you see my mustache and my beard, right? You see me with tats and stuff. At that time, I'm a clean cut soldier with no facial hair, no other tattoos on my body yet. I was just like a normal man, like not distinctible, but in the spirit. When God has a calling for your life, when God wants to heal you, He will point you out to His people. I remember closing my eyes and saying, God, if you're real, you'll have the pastor pray for me. And as I'm saying this with my head down, I don't even know why I asked that. Um, the I felt a hand on my heart, and it was the pastor of the church, and there was another person to my left and to my right, and they started telling me how much God loved me, right? And it blew my mind because I had just said, God, if you're real, right? And the pastor's praying. So now that reality is right there. And then I'm looking at them, and then I they fade away. Like humans start to fade away at that moment. Um the people, the pastor, like I heard the voices of them praying, but their faces I no longer saw. And what I saw with my eyes was this bright light, brighter than this light right here. You know how bright this light is? Like it was a super bright light, and it felt so warm, and it felt so loving and so peaceful, and all of that, and God encountered me that day. I remember after the vision goes away, and I'm at a loss for words. I remember taking the pack of cigarettes out of my pocket immediately and just throwing it away, like immediately. It was like nobody told me. It was just like that encounter that I had in my heart. It made me know that that's what I needed. And I wish I could say that after that encounter, everything was rainbow and sunshine and strawberries, but no, it wasn't. Um, I encountered a lot of difficulties. I almost lost my marriage. Um, God did save me that day, and I prayed the prayer, and I started waking up every day and reading my Bible. There was no Instagram, TikTok back then. Those days in 2009, 2010, there was no TikTok back then, or Instagram, and Facebook was barely coming out. So all these things, it was like my focus was on waking up every day and reading the Word, and trying to find out who Jesus was, and that encounter that I had. But me and my wife had issues in our own life, and so both our baggages and unclaimed baggages, like things in our heart, we started attacking one another. And then I was the one who stepped out of my marriage, out of my pride, and I almost lost my marriage. And God, by His abundant mercy and grace, has restored my marriage. And maybe I can share my marriage testimony separately, but just to keep this video as short as possible, under 30 minutes at least. If you're hearing this, I just want you to know that God God can set you free. If God was willing to look down on somebody like me and help my confusion, remove my hurt, my pride, my arrogance, my ways of thinking because of my pain, if God can do it with somebody like me who had a stony heart, my heart was so hard, and God removed it, and I am so in love with him more today than I ever been. And I've been saved for now 13 years, and I'm growing every single day. And I see the platform growing for TikTok, and over 200,000 followers there, and over 16,000 followers on Instagram, and almost 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Like, to me, it means a lot. To me, it shows, it proves the miracle of God working in my life. And I don't want you to ever think that you're too far gone for God, and think that I think that I'm better than you just because I do these lives and I'm teaching you this word. I'm doing this because he set me free. He met me at my lowest point, and it was because of the power of his grace and his mercy and his love and his blood that has set me free. And every day I was intentional to read my word and go into prayer and learn and hear sermons and do what I needed to do to drink of this water of his word. Some of you need to know this. Like, if you're looking at me and be like, man, that's an amazing story. How can, I don't know if that could happen to me. Like, that's the mentality that you cannot have. You have to believe that God can do it and will do it because he has no favoritism. He loves us all the same. That's my testimony of how I came to the Lord. And I pray that this testimony video helps somebody. I pray that, it encourages you, and if you did like this, and consider sharing this with somebody that you feel needs this, and also make sure that you like the video. Comment your thoughts below. What is your testimony? And give me some ideas, or any, if you have any questions for me, type it in the comment section below. Just want you to know that God is not done with you. If God did it for me, he could do it for you. I love you so much, and I thank you for watching this video. In Jesus' mighty name. Rise. Peace. Rise.